sometimes expire. The motion for this drawing is this also poses the narrative that infidelity should lead to breakup. Without any further ado, let's call upon the Prime Minister.
We find the prevailing social norm as something that is unnecessary and something that is confining couples regardless what they want. We say the couples have the right to choose something that is going to be fit to those kind of couples, and that should be to their own choice. We say the narrative that dictates some people's choice is something that is ridiculous and something that is unnecessary and something that is harmful. Three things that I'm going to talk about. Firstly, I'm going to talk about who's harmed and what kind of couples are we targeting. And second, I'm going to talk about why the choice of infidelity is something that is not absolutely bad and something that is up to the choice of the individual. Thirdly, we're going to talk about how that is unnecessary and our world is going to be bringing about a better society. But before that, a brief clarification. We think this one is about the Bible judgment, and we say our word of proof is to show that this is harmful and this is unnecessary, and we say, and that's something that we're going to bring about. And we say we are going to oppose any kind of social norm that is existing, or social narrative that is confining many people and having the pressure to have some kind of marital notion. So, having something that, let's have a look at first of something about who's harmed. So before that, one clarification of what is the narrative. We say we find narrative is something that is a shared set of value as a communality amongst all the members of the society, all the majority of the society. And I think it is especially those kind of narrative that we are targeting as something that's infidelity should lead to the breakup is meaning that this is regarded as normal and this is regarded as same. We say those who do not choose to break up, even if they are revealed to have those kind of infidelity, is something that is not abnormal or that is insane. That's the current situation that is happening under the current situation. And we say when it's shared among the society, that is going to let other people implicitly or explicitly condemn those the couples who are revealed out that they had one part of that couple had the infidelity situation. Maybe they're going to be from parents or from colleagues or from friends, they're going to be condemned that why don't you break up? Why don't you break? Or they're going to have social medias or any kind of the situation. That's not really very targeting. Who's suffering under the current situation? We say, of course, the first person who's suffering is the seeker of the new type of relationship. That is to say, someone who wants to keep the someone who wants to keep the marital status, even if the one couple or one agent of that situation with that marital status have been revealed to have the infidelity. That's something. Those kind of people are existing under the current situation. Of course, we say that, for example, there are many couples who think that having sex with many with other people who are not your spouse is existing right now. And also, we say couples who do not think that sex is something that is absolutely important, or something that is the core value of marital status. Those kind of people are existing. And also, we think because of relational reason, it is okay to have sex with many people. That's something. Those are the people we're targeting. What is happening under the current situation is that they are the social narrative is taken into the consideration if they are revealed to have those kind of to have infidelity. What happens is two scenarios. First one, they are going to be forced to break up, even if they want to keep the situation, even if they want to connect it as a family, maybe financial reason, or they have still affection to that people. The second type of scenario is that they are continuing to live together and they're going to be exposed to constantly condemn coming from the parent, coming from the family, coming from other part of the society who have nothing to do with those kind of relationships. That's something that is happening in the current situation. But they are not the one who are suffering under the condition, not only the one who are currently suffering from the situation. Like second type of the people who are suffering under the condition is that other people. We say like even though other people think that they should be together, they should keep on like married, and that is going to be fit, and like that is something that they want. They are not able to voice out, because if you are going to say something that's against the narrative, then they are going to be seen as abnormal, insane, or like morally culpable. Third type of people is someone who are not married under the current situation, but they think that having sex with many people is okay, and those kind of people is somewhat under the current situation refrain from having the marriage. That's something that is happening under the current situation. Secondly, why it should be up to the individual choice before they go.
On the one hand, there are narratives which said infidelity should lead to breakups. But on the other hand, there are also narratives by saying infidelity should not lead to breakup for the children, etc. Why does saying one opinion lead to abnormalities?
Because we are going to like because it forces people, and it say like that one narrative that we are targeting under the current situation is so strong that other kind of narrative is silenced, and that's why what we say is we want to support the current, we're going to support the society where no one is confined by any kind of narrative, and those kind of choices should lead to individuals. That's something that I'm right now talking about. Because the only agent that knows what kind of relationship should they have is that person. We say other people should not decide because they do not know. And ultimately, because the reason why they have the relationship as friends, for example, as first as any kind of agent, is because they think that that's good for them. And we say any kind of human relationship should be based on the agreement that is between those kind of two actors. We say narrative has nothing to do with those kind of, and because narrative that relationship. We do not allow any kind of dictatorship coming from narrative or dictatorship, because it's going to be natural for those kind of that agent that is involved in the situation. We say, like, analogy here is, for example, gay marriage or polygamy. We are going to accept those kind of situations because of the fact that no other people should decide what kind of relationship that two people or the three or more people should have. Thirdly, why it is unnecessary? Opposition might say that it is necessary to deter confusion. We do not think so, because what we are going to support is that if you want to break up after revealing like infidelity, then you're going to be able to do that between the negotiation or as a consequence of that negotiation. And moreover, we say better relationship because it's going to be guaranteed inside the house. Why? Because they are going to be purely based on the agreement for two people, and they are more able to ask for other people who advises if that happens. Because narrative is not going to decide what you should do. It is going to be better for the seeker of new type of relationship, and it is also going to be better for the people people who are fine with the conventional type of marriage. We're very happy to do that.
Thank you for your remark. Next time, let's call on the leader of the opposition.
Prime Minister has told us that some people might want to continue to engage with romantic relationships or marital relationship even after infidelity. But we think on the side of the house that realistically, in vast majority of the cases, victims of infidelity feel extremely frustrated or betrayed, which will lead to bad family relations. So in order to protect these individuals from that kind of harm, we are extremely proud to oppose this motion. So, in my speech, I'd like to talk about two things from leader of the opposition. First of all, I'd like to talk about how infidelity realistically worsens family relationship in vast majority of cases, and what will happen to individuals or couples in paradigm with and without the existence of this narrative. Second of all, I'd like to talk about how the existence of this narrative is deterring people from engaging with infidelity, which causes the negative impacts that I would like to talk about in our first point. But before that, several points of independent rebuttals to Prime Minister. So, firstly, we have Prime Minister has told us the decision about whether to have divorce or breakup should be up to individuals or couples themselves, not by the narrative. But two responses from this side of the house. Firstly, we'd like to point out that in majority of liberal democratic countries, reality is that society is still male dominant, and also in fact majority of cases, the person engaging with infidelity is man. On that occasion, Madam Chair, if we are leaving decision up to the hands of individuals or couples themselves, then what's likely to happen under their side of the house is that negotiation between couples is dominated by the male. Then the likely scenario under their side of the house is that, for example, even if female really think that I am betrayed my husband and I really want to break up with my husband because I cannot trust him anymore, if men say to the women that I'm sorry, I really regret what I have done, all those sort of things, then usually negotiation is dominated by the male, and women's side have to endure the severe mental harm that they are receiving by the fact of infidelity. That's why we think that it's quite necessary for us to have the narrative that condemns infidelity on the outside of the house. Secondly, Prime Minister quoted the analogy gay marriage, but what we have to recognize here is that in cases of gay marriage, the parties who are involved in that kind of relationship are not suffering to begin with, Madam Chair. But compared to that, in cases of infidelity, the persons who are involved with that kind of relationship will be severely harmed. So that's the difference between this side of the house and their side of the house, and that analogy is not really applicable to this debate in the first place. So, having refuted that, let me move on to our first argument about how infidelity realistically worsens family relationship in vast majority of cases, and what will happen to individuals in the paradigm with and without this narrative. So, Madam Chair, Prime Minister has told us that some people might want to continue marital relationship even after infidelity, but realistically, we think that anyway, it's inevitable that people feel severely uncomfortable or feel a sense of betrayal by the fact of infidelity, because it's quite natural for individuals to have a desire to have someone who are always beside you and who always support you. But if the victim of infidelity continue to endure that fact of infidelity, that will surely lead to bad family relationship under their side of the house because of the distrust that is created by that fact. For example, these couples start to quarrel with each other, and that itself is stressful. But in cases of couples who have their children, it is also severely really bad for these children to continue to see their parents quarreling with each other. We think that it severely prevents these children from their healthy mental growth, because children have to hate either or both of their parents, and that's the harm that we have to recognize on our side of the house. No thank you. But the problem on their side of the house is that without the existence of this narrative, people will tend to hesitate to break up even though they have to suffer from these kinds of stress or the harm. Because, for example, having divorce or breaking up is highly demonized in society. So under their side of the house, what's likely to happen is that the victims of infidelity are suffering, but since they are afraid of discrimination or stigmatization that they will face in society, they will hesitate to break up, and they have to endure the mental suffering. Yes.
You're limiting your harm to countries like Japan, where there's severe patriarchy, in which is the problem which is not in infidelity. Why would your harm still be in cases where countries like France, where there's lax divorce laws, and people are generally accepting divorce?
Because still, even in that kind of countries, when we consider the natural tendency of the human beings, the fact that my husband are engaging with infidelity or so forth are severely harming the mindset of individuals. So moving back to your point. So under their side of the house, so even if they can successfully break up by overcoming that kind of fear of discrimination or stigmatization, they anyway they will be recognized as an irresponsible person who get divorced or who break up for illegitimate reasons like infidelity, and they will be recognized as a person who have a problem within their personality. But compared to that, on the other side of the house, since infidelity will be recognized as a legitimate reason to break up or legitimate reason to get divorced, even if these people break up or get divorced and become single mother, these kinds of people will not be discriminated, stigmatized, or demonized on the outside of the house because surrounding people will sympathize you by saying that, oh, you have engaging with infidelity, it's organized for these people to get divorced or so forth. So, so that's the benefit that we can ensure on our side of the house in which those kinds of narrative existing. So, for the reasons we are extremely proud to oppose.
Thank you for your remark. Next, I will call upon the Deputy Prime Minister to continue the hearing.
We believe any values or any, sorry, not values, any narratives existing in society telling you what to do with your relationship becomes toxic because it indoctrinates you and it locks you up in that narrative and harms your love or your relationship. Because there are a whole plethora of reasons people want to stay with each other or people want to not stay with each other. But all those narratives existing, those external factors making you think so, hinder that discourse or hinder that calculation within the individual's mind, and oftentimes leads to a bad choice where you don't want to. That's why on the government side we believe that this narrative should not exist and it should ultimately be up to the individual's minds. One point of substantive element provided from the Deputy Prime Minister what is on the concerning how relationships are being conceived, and it is ultimately unfair for any kind of other external factor, i.e. narratives to exist, to be on the side of one side. This is not negated by the point that there are other narratives, because those narratives in and of itself create harms uniquely, irreversibly, or in response to each other. So the realistic thing, thank you, is that those kind of narratives which complete clash with each other, cause individual harm in that process of mitigating the thing. And so, before we get to my arguments, reputations to leader opposition. First, no thank you. They gave us a red herring cake when they talked about how patriarchy locks up these individuals into those relationships. As I have pointed out in my point of information, that is not a problem, or that is not a problem with the narrative existing. That is a problem with a complete different factor existing in society, which is patriarchy, or in some cases matriarchy, which forces individuals, rendering them without choices. And we believe that is not the spirit of the motion, because motion does not define any time, place, or place it. There is no reason for the opposition side to base all their harms into one place. Because if you consider no thank you, for example, the point of information I proposed to you, for example, France, there is no locking up happening. So we don't think that is a problem of the status quo and a problem that they can defend. But even if we were taken to that context still, we still think it's better for our side with this kind of narrative, without this kind of narrative existing. Because on their side, what happens is a conflict amongst these individuals. Because society's narrative is telling you to divorce that husband, but that husband is forcing into that position. So these individuals who have to remain in those families are pushed, have to swallow down their throat that even though this is a narrative that is something bad in society, they have to remain in court. They put guilt in these individuals' hearts, and we still think even in a patriarchal society, those kind of harms are unacceptable. Now, thank you. Then they talked about gay marriage. Because but this is I'd rather talk in my substantive, why they should take one stance to any side. We still don't see there's a reason. They only talked about, well, it's a thing about other people, it's only about those individuals. But they never told why other individuals should have to care about those kind of things. And finally, we talked about the bad family relationship. No, thank you. And we think that it's rather problematic international bad family relationship, that these kind of narratives existing. Because in that kind of bad family relationship existing, those kind of other values hindering against divorce for these people is something bad. For example, if there's Hiramoto's problem was based on the fact that those kind of other divorce is going to stimulate these individuals, and it's going to be something bad for these individuals. But these individuals face a dilemma, because there's a still narrative against divorce that is conceived as something bad, but on the other hand, they have a dilemma, because when they want to divorce, when they don't want to divorce, they're facing a stigma or narrative existing in society, which saying that choice is something that they must take. So ultimately, they're putting individuals in dilemma, and they're just putting burden on these individuals when they conceive of similar narrative existing in society. So the conclusion of these refutations is that Hiramoto provided with you many harms, but if you look into their case, it doesn't get any better in their own sense too. They have to provide you why those narratives in and of itself is something necessary and something that does benefit for these individuals. I never saw that coming from leader opposition. Yes.
So the context the Prime Minister talked about is a context where this idea, a narrative that infidelity should lead to breakup is quite dominant. Then the only context talked about is France, and you have proven by yourself that's not the context. But which country are you talking about?
No, we're not saying that this has a specific narrative, because my Prime Minister's case is not predominated on the fact that these kind of things. What you have to tell me from the continuous speakers, and what I don't think you've ever told us, is that why is synonymous those two narratives existing, and I don't think those kind of things will be substantially able. Still enough, you still haven't provided with a step. So moving on to the second point, why it's fundamentally unfair for any narrative existing that they dominate how that relationship should turn out for these individuals by an external narrative. Because I have to re-emphasize the point that the narrative is not something that how these people feel. As pointed out by the Prime Minister, a narrative is an idea shared amongst the people, thinking action A is something good, or in the case of Muslim, having to divorce is something good. So the first point of refutation, or kind of construction, is that when they conceive those kind of two narratives existing, it doesn't mitigate the harms, it just dualistic doubles the harms. Because if these individuals would choose to divorce, they're going to be condemned. But if the narrative that these individuals shouldn't divorce exists, then these individuals will be condemned by that narrative too. They're facing a dilemma, and we don't think those kind of things are fair. Why is this unfair, Mrs. Speaker? Because if you consider how people enter a relationship, it's A, when you want to be with that other person, and B, when you think that that relationship is in and of itself good for you. So if you analyze the characteristic of what a relationship is, it is ultimately up to those two individuals what they think is good or not. That is why we support a framework where these individuals make an independent choice within their own mind. If these individuals find the other person cheating on them bad, then so be it. They can break up. But the important thing is that no other person should have a value, and no value should be shared amongst the individuals. That is a good fact to do. Because when those kind of things exist, these individuals' calculus are distorted to the sense that it other matters. Because now they have to care how other people are going to feel about their divorce, or how the other people are going to be feeling about their infidelity. We don't think these kind of things are very good, because when those kind of narratives, the first problem with this thing is that it has no claim to exist in those people's calculus. They are yet to prove us why one side of that relationship should be predominantly biased against one side. Because you could argue, and more, why should one individual be able to confine another individual into their relationship when they're not sexually pleased with those kind of things? Why is that ultimately selfish act on the side of the person who is so-called being cheated right now should be a right that should be ultimately provided and supported amongst the people? Because these people can still choose to break up, and we don't see why is this state or any other people should take a side on. But more importantly, Mrs. Speaker, is that when those kind of narratives exist, those kind of calculuses are going to be distorted. Because these people have many things to care about. How about what do they have to do with their child? What are their religious values? What are their moral values? And what do they find best in relationship or marital status? These individuals might not look for sex within their marital status. They might look for their economic stability. They might just like their partner but not want to have sex. But all those values are still up to that individual. We fundamentally claim that there is no place for other values to exist in the relationship. So one side is yet to tell us why there has to be a narrative which tells people what to do. All their harms are based on the point that it's something bad to people. But we say from government side, people can still break up. And if they cannot break up, it's not a problem of this kind of narrative. So for all these reasons, we think this narrative is abhorrent, we don't need it, we don't need it.
Thank you very much, Mark. Next, I will call on the next leader of the
頑張って。頑張って。オッケー、言っといて。それも言っといて。
As a deputy leader of opposition, I'm going to prove to you three things. Firstly, they say they make this debate into choice of individuals versus the narrative forcing them to break up, right? However, their premise is that this choice is totally valid. However, we're going to doubt this validity of the choice in itself. And secondly, I'm going to talk about how, as a result of this choice, which side is better for the victim, like the side partner who is cheated upon, and also the child. And lastly, I'm going to compare the stigma, because they say that stigma of the the opposite narrative is going to cause the couples who don't want to break up to feel sad and be intimidated. However, the harm is far smaller under our side of the house. But before that, many rebuttals, because we are very confused in this debate. Firstly, Julie says about very liberal context. However, in France, this kind of dominant narrative does not exist. That is why people can choose whatever love form to pursue, right? Firstly. And secondly, if there are two or many types of narratives, then people can choose, right? And also, if you say that people should not be influenced by outside narratives, or neighbors talking about how your relationship should be, then firstly, we like to point out that that is just an opinion. That is not a narrative. Everyone has an opinion about what couples, what relationships should be like, and that is what happens in daily life, right? And also, if they say that it should be up to the individual choice, then if we have as many narratives as possible, isn't that supporting the individual choice by providing the many options possible, right? So they fail to oppose the narrative. Okay. And thirdly, their premise is that the possibility of couples failing to create a healthy relationship again, and also the couples becoming healthy relationship again, is more or less the same. However, that is not true, right? We have already illustrated to you how, after one infidelity, the couple's relationship is going to be totally devastated, which I'll illustrate later. However, their claim that it will get better is not true. It could get better is not true, because firstly, it is going to repeat in so many cases, because once you allow your partner and once you forgive your partner, then they're going to just think that, oh, I did it once, but she forgave me, so I can just do it again. Some men or women are like that, right? And secondly, what if it happens again? The harm is going to be far more deeper, because you gave them a chance. However, it was such a big stress for you to give them another chance. However, they broke your heart again, right? So you know that they really, really don't care about you, and they don't give anything about you, right? And thirdly, if you are going to spend the rest of your life with that partner worrying about the possibility that they will cheat on you again, why not spend the time with someone else, or put that energy into raising your child in a better way, right? There are so many other possibilities, but without this narrative that you can break up if you want, if your partner cheats on you, then many women or many men are going to be hindered from breaking up because of the social stigma of breaking up. Not now. Firstly, first, the validity of the choice, right? This is not, the partner forgiving the other cheater is not a completely free choice in the first place, because if you really still love the other partner, and if you really think that him having sex with someone else is okay, then this narrative itself is not going to force you to break up in the first place, right? The couples that change their action because of the narrative are the couple who have sworn to each other to just love each other, right? So this is not about the narrative telling you what kind of love is absolute. It's about saying that betrayal to your partner leads to a breakup, and deterring that kind of betrayal, right? So, firstly, what is happening in the status quo? Still, one partner we're not saying it's definitely men. One partner is still more powerful than the other because that cheater is managing to persuade the partner to forgive, right? For their selfish reasons. For example, they don't want bad history of having many breakups because it will affect them having a successful career or something like that. And they also know and actively exploit the fact that the partner loves them, so they are very likely to forgive them. And the third reason is that because they're already being heartbroken, they're already going through a very deep emotional stress, then they're not going to want to have even more stress by breaking up with their partner and becoming single again, right? So that is why it's very easy for the cheater to persuade the other partner into not breaking up with them. So that is why it's a very hard choice to take in the status quo even. And also, about the sex. Okay.
So if you think there's harms in remaining in an infidelity relationship, why does your whip support a narrative that lets people remain in that relationship?
No, we don't. Okay. Thirdly, my second point about the harm that will be caused to all actors, psychological harm, is incommensurable, right? The bad influences of infidelity does not go away because one betrayal destroys all of the trust that is built in such a long time, right? Firstly, it's emotionally very hard to spend time with you knowing that the other partner is not true to you anymore, and you also doubt every day that it might happen again. So what will happen is that it's also going to cause discord in your daily life because you doubt them. You're going to become more controlling of your partner. You want to check their phones or not allow them to go to nomikai and things like that. And also, when you have a fight, you're going to bring up the cheating incident again and cause stress to your partner, right? So it's going to cause more fights, and you're going to have to put up with being unhappy with your partner for 20 or 30 or 50 years in future, right? And also, for the development of the kids, Hiramu already talked about this, but firstly, your parents are always fighting, or maybe your father is never at home, so this is already extreme mental stress. But moreover, you're forced to take sides between your father and mother because they're not getting along with each other. For example, you have to hear your mother whine about your father every day, or like you're going to be divided between two parents, so you don't have this childly affection. And thirdly, you're going to feel responsible that it is because of me that the parents cannot break up. So you're going to be very intimidated, right? So what will happen is that these kids, when they grow up, they cannot believe in love, or they cannot get attached to other people. So that is why they sometimes become, unfortunately, delinquents or hikikomori, or maybe cannot find a love partner in the future. That's very sad. Lastly, about the and these things can be solved if they break up, right? Lastly, about the comparison stigma. So, under your side of the house, the stigma toward breaking up is definitely going to get stronger because, and what will happen is for the people who really don't want to stay in that relationship, they're going to be blamed as too strict or archaic or shallow when they break up. However, if there is no such narrative, then when the narrative is that it is okay to stay, you should break up, but if you stay together, it's not such a good, strong stigma because people just think that you overcome such a difficult incident, or you love each other so much that even if you should break up, those two didn't break up, but it's okay as it is, right? So when we compare the strength of the stigma, you should take opposition side. That's why we are very proud to oppose.
I only have one crash point, which is about does the choice which proposition support provide better consequences than always breaking up? Because we are not very interested in whether the validity of a choice is absolute or not, whether people should not intervene in choices or not. What we are interested in is what is going to be a true consequences of that choice, and whether the choice that couple has made without any interference of the is going to make those couples better off or not. Before that, I want to clarify three things before getting to my points. Firstly, So idea about the context, right? So from the Prime Minister we heard, well the problem is that these certain narratives are dominant and therefore people are coerced into opt into that narrative. And then Deputy Prime Minister told us, no, the problem is not about one narrative is being dominant, but the problem is about having lots of narratives in society and they're going to conflict each other. Then the government tells us, no, it's not about having multi-dimensional narrative, but it's about having one dominant narrative, right? I'm not very quite sure what kind of model they're supporting or what kind of context they're supporting, a horrible inconsistency, but we think in a realistic manner, we think these narratives does exist in many ways. Even in countries like Japan, the United States, or wherever, there is a narrative which said, no, you should break up, that's a horrible person, and that person is going to betray you again. But also there's other narrative which said, no, you should just keep it, breaking up kind of seems bad, in terms of society with feelings, and maybe some people doesn't really like it, your father doesn't like it, both opinions does exist, and both narrative does exist, right? That's a realistic one we want to fit in, firstly. Second, so the distinction of definitions, right? So, their definition was, they're just going to oppose any narrative, right, to go against, or go against the go prop to any choices that each individual has made. We're supporting a case where this narrative does exist, and we want that to be dominant, to be honest. We think that people who have conducted infidelity should break up. That's the kind of what we're supporting. We don't want people to just keep going on and have this horrible relationship for their entire life. We want those people to break up. We want the society to deter people not to do infidelity, because once you do infidelity, you have to break up. So that's the comparison we have to draw here, right? And then, given that certain context does exist, well, let's look at the idea about the narrative in this debate, right? So, they told us, they're fine to have opinions, but they're not fine to have narratives. Right? There are no distinction on this point, right? Obviously. Because narrative, the things they have talked about narrative, saying it's going to coerce people, is not narrative. It's a norm that exists, which has to be a dominant norm, right? But given that they have failed to prove to us that there are certain dominant norm and narrative that exist in society which is strong enough to coerce people, then given that it is true that the Deputy Prime Minister said, there are several kind of narratives that exist in society, none of them are going to coerce people. People can just opt into the certain opinions which people want to, right? So given that they have opposed this entire narrative, they just said people should make no claim whatsoever in terms of how people should do when infidelity happens. People are never going to hear anything. People are not going to acquire any information. People are not going to hear any opinion, because basically they have failed to distinguish the narrative and opinion. And if they're going to oppose narrative, they're also going to oppose opinion. They are just going to listen nothing to it. We don't think in that situation people can make good choices. Firstly, let's talk about this problem of consequences. Firstly, they told us from Prime Minister, well, people are coerced into breakups. Well, that's a problem. Well, okay, their context was wrong, right? If there are several types of narrative does exist, well, people are not coerced into, obviously. People can just opt into certain opinions. But, given the definition we're supporting, where we're supporting a strong narrative to make people break up, yes, that coercion can happen. We agree to it. But we want that coercion to happen, and we don't think that should be a coercion. We just want people to think that we have to break up. We just want entire society to think that keeping a relationship is not even possible. That's not proper science, right? That's the context. We agree that coercion could happen on opposition bench. But secondly, they have to tell us then why the coercion is such a horrible thing to do, right? Then the argument comes from Prime Minister, which has been asserted, never makes fun upon in that entire three speaker. They just kept popping on analysis saying, oh, it's a good choices. Only couples know what to do, and other people doesn't know. And just kept hopping on to by saying that couples just know everything without telling us what kind of choice they're going to make, what kind of discourse they're going to make, what kind of conclusion they're going to lead, whether it's going to be valid, whether they have actually been sufficient or been satisfied by making that choice whatsoever. So they just keep asserting it's a choice without telling us how it's going to be a good choice. And remember, they never told us what the outcomes are likely going to be, right? And then also they never told us how it's going to minimize the harm they have to hopping on when they actually make a good choice. That's the point we have been telling you from Middle Opposition right from the start, right? So, given that we were talking about the context where patriarchy does exist, well, firstly, in the POI, they told us, no, we are limiting the case to only Japan. For example, let's talk about France. There are no patriarchy. Firstly, patriarchy does exist in France too, right? And then that was the only example they told us where patriarchy seems to not exist, right? In vast majority of the country, including the United States, in Western part, Japan, Korea, Asian country, European country, African country, patriarchy still does exist and its prevalence, right? That is a concept we have to put in our mind and have to deal with within our calculations, right? Given that patriarchy does exist, it is always going to be a male-dominant conversation, a male-dominant discourse, a male-dominant decision, right? Always a female sometimes have to be subjugated to the argument that is given from the male, and they are unfortunately likely to be convinced by the male by saying, I am never going to cheat you, I just love you so much, I'm never going to please don't break up. And those people may have to obey to it sometimes, even though that may not be a best choice for those individuals, right? They have to agree to suboptimal consequences despite the fact they does not like it, right? But that's the problem. And it is often the male who say, I don't want to break up, as we have to yellow. Those people don't want to break up. They don't want this cross mark in their like, an ID card whatsoever, because other women are going to despise them. Society thinks, no, he's a person who can't have a family, so it's not good things, right? So obviously those people will hate it, yes.
When patriarchy is so entrenched and your deputy lead option says these kind of narratives can overturn easily, how is that going to help in your product? How is this narrative going to help in your product?
Okay, so basically if you let those people make a choice, it is always going to be male dominant. Well, it's not going to be like males going to force them, but basically going to be male in favor discourse, right? So that's the reason why we want the society to think, if one people make an infidelity, you should need to break up. No one should keep a family going on. If the one mate cheated, you have to break up, right? It's going to be weird if you're not going to break up, and that's how the way that we want society to think, right? And that is the consequences we want to draw. And then the reason why we want this every kind of couple to break up was quite obvious. Compared to the weird choice that is going to be not nice, to those females, if the ones those victims can actually go away from the relationship without having any dishonest person within society, those people can start a new life. They don't have to see all the quarrel, and children doesn't have to see all the quarrel that's going on, and all the benefit we have told you. Moreover, it is important to say that we can deter the infidelity happening itself, right? So that's the point, right? If the infidelity does not happen, all the harm we have told you is not going to happen, because we can make male think that if you once cheat, at the end, you have to break up, and that's the benefit we want to provide in opposition.
Thank you for a nice remark. And now let's call on the reply speaker from the commission. Take care.
I'm going to show you the reason for decision to vote for the opposition side. So, the government side says that everything should be decided by the individual couples. However, we have shown you, by given many reasons, that individuals cannot make the best choice for themselves all the time. They make irrational choices, and that is why, improve the chances of them making the best choice for their life, they need the guide. And we are saying that this narrative can be the last push to push those individuals who need to get divorced to get the right choice, right? So that is the reason for decision, and I'm going to go into the details of how we have proved this point. Because the government side is saying that if you really want to break up, you can. However, we have already shown you that without this narrative, it is extremely hard for the people who have been cheated upon to get divorced, because government is the one supporting a world in which people cannot get out from poisonous relationships even if they wanted to, right? So why is it so hard to get out from these relationships? Firstly, we have shown you that it is because of love. When you love a person, when that person is going to cry in front of you and say that I'm sincerely sorry, I will never do it again, you just cannot say no to that person, right? Because you have a long relationship and history and you go way back, right? So that is one reason, one strong reason. And secondly, there is a fear towards having divorce simply because it's going to cause a drastic change to your life. You don't know what lay ahead of you in the future if you leave your partner, leave your house, and you have to start a whole new life, right? We have already talked about this. But thirdly, because of the social stigma, which our whip talked about in detail, because there is very strong narrative that men do infidelity from time to time, and women should be generous to that, and that is an undeniable fact that that narrative is still existent in the status quo. And also, if you break up, then you're going to be labeled as a strict and scary woman, and you will never get married again. Or maybe people will say that your child is so unfortunate because you just couldn't forgive your partner, and then the child has to grow up in a single mother family. right? So there are so many reasons, and the government side never rebutted to these kind of reasons, which is hindering the person from getting divorced, which is a fatal failure from the government side, because tons of reasons are stopping you from having divorce, even if you wanted to. So what is the result of that? It's going to be a disastrous marriage life. You're going to have to live your lifetime being unable to believe that you're being loved by your partner who you're spending 50 years with, and also seeing your child grow up in a house full of fights and discord, and thinking that this is because I could not break up with him 10 years ago. That is going to be very hard, and this hard situation they cannot overcome the situation without this narrative. That is the problem raised by the opposition side. So let's look at what the government side did in this debate, right? So they never really explained to us why the person who is so hurt and heartbroken by being cheated upon can rationally judge whether or not they should get divorced or not, right? Because this is already a socially and economically difficult decision. When you don't even have a narrative to say that affirm your emotion that you want to break up, it is okay to break up if you are so heartbroken, then you are not going to, whether or not you are so hurt or whether or not you think infidelity is okay, the only option left for you is to stay in that poisonous relationship, right? So their harm that they depicted is actually very small, and they can be ignored when compared to lifetime imprisonment with a horrible partner, right? For people who don't really think that infidelity should lead to divorce, like the open relationship couple that the Whip talked about, for those people, if they can make such perfect decision, then if they really don't care about infidelity, and if they really still love their partner, then they're not going to be influenced by this narrative. So there's really not many harm that the government side has proven. So we have already shown you that this narrative is going to be the last bastion to help the people who really need to get out of this poisonous relationship, and because their side never gave any harm, we're very proud to stand on the opposition side.
Thank you for your remarks. Next, let's call on the representative from the government. Stay here.
Opposition side today mainly analyze the harms of infidelity. But we ultimately say there's still the perspective of someone who honestly thinks infidelity is something bad. But that is one premise which they have never proven to us. Because all the harms they talk about were predicated for the person who has the perspective of infidelity is something bad. I'm going to dissect Op's case and perspective in a reasonable reason. I'm going to tell you why all their arguments, at the best, are still not supporting their side. I'm going to tell you why still that narrative is something that we do not need and which is something to take away. So the main analysis on how people can divorce came from Debbie Reed on the show. Let's look into what she said. She said that the other partner is going to strongly tell that person that not to. There's a strong structure of patriarchy existing here, and there's a fear of divorce amongst these individuals. First question I want to ask them, when they analyze so much kind of hard binding forces surrounding these individuals, I didn't think they ever told us how this mere narrative, in their perspective, is going to overturn those individuals to make such a choice. Because they tell us everything, they blame us that these individuals can no longer make a choice. I want to ask you, then how is your people in their paradigm, with facing those kind of strong forces right in front of them, is going to be swayed by the narrative? They tell us that we do not tell how the divorce happens, but they never did that for themselves. Then finally, second point is that they think that the divorcing is something inherently bad. But this is not a fact which has not been contested in this debate. Because I've told you there's a variety of issues regarding divorce. Because they think that, for example, that these people in that abusive situation is something bad for that person. But you flip the coin, flip the side, and if you look at our analysis, what we have provided in the debate, we have told you how all those instances could be bad if these individuals chose to marry. Because if there's a structure of patriarchy, that woman no longer having the support of the husband could be equally worse for that individual. Or if it's a case of a relationship, having a child, that that person having to divorce might be equally bad for that child, or that person having to leave that husband might be equally bad for their choice. All their arguments concerning why this was bad was limited to the point that this is a natural bad choice that people should never take up, but they never substantiated this point. And this is problematic for opposition side to stick on a stance, because when they say that gay marriage is something it should be accepted because it's not something natural, it doesn't have to be something natural, or when they talk about how these values are something important to people, they have to tell us why there has to be an absolute bias to this value in their side, where this has to be a supporting narrative amongst these individuals. They ultimately fail to provide with us why one narrative is ultimately good for these individuals. So the conclusion of this dissection of opposition's case, yes, they might sound compelling that divorce might be bad for one people, but that's ultimately their opinion and not an argument concerning why these individuals must not separate. We have done the contrary, and on the government side, we told you why this is very important to have this, not have other people's influences. Because ultimately, as we have told you from constituency, opinions and these kind of narratives is something different. Opinion is something other people tell you, but a narrative is indoctrinated within you. You think that it's something good, and that binds your choice. We think those kind of choices were hard for. Because if you look at the consequences of divorce, and it is toxic as it is, and there's no moral value that we can draw in this kind of instance, we think the ultimate factor should be decided amongst these individuals within their own relationship. That's the principle we provided to you in this debate. Because we have continuously told you, no other person in this kind of relationship has a claim what to decide for themselves. And there was no response from the opposite side. All the responses were on the point that divorce is something bad. But when they lose that basis, they have never supported, they have no claim to that support. And there's another harm of this kind of narrative existing, regardless of these individuals. That was the harm which we provided you from Prime Minister. When we told you that this kind of dictating narrative existing in society conforms other people's values, there are individuals who are gradually changing to accepting this kind of value. Their only response was that these people are going to break away that kind of value. Well, what to ask you, Mr. Speaker, is that why should these individuals be the ones only forced to fight against that social narrative? Why is it just for the society to believe in such a manner? They never provided us. So ultimately, Mr. Speaker, all the moral judgment done in this debate was done from side government, because we were the one who told you there is no good judgment regardless if it's not being done by these individuals. For all these bases, we don't think there's a reason to vote for opposition. Thank you very much.